why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why, 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? Why does Rice play Texas? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win, and the others too.
Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
By the time the Apollo 11 launch came around, and we knew that Neil was going to be on it, we were all watching, and there was a lot of hype in Wapak. At that point, I was living in Columbus, Ohio. I was teaching at the Ohio State University and working in that area, and we were ready. So we had a black and white television. We did not have a color television at the time, and it was small. It was probably a 12, 14-inch television. It was not a big one. We had just bought a new home, so we had no money, you know, and we're huddled around this little tiny television.
I was in front of the television watching, and I would have thought it was a color TV, but I don't know when we got a color TV. But anyways, I was watching it, and I was impressed to see the module land on the moon and Neil Armstrong get out. Just very impressed, and I was ill that day actually, but I was glued to the tube.
You know, I was watching on TV. I was alone in my apartment, and I watched Neil Armstrong come down the steps, and it was a very fuzzy picture at that time. It was the first time we'd had pictures from outer space and from the moon, 240,000 miles away. It was very, very fuzzy, and so it was hard to see. You remember this when TV first happened. It was very, very snowy. You had these blurry images of people moving around. That's what TV was. Wapak is a very small town, like Lakeview is here. Not like Columbus, which everybody knows of Columbus because they have a pro team. They have the Buckeyes there. So everybody, you can go to Timbuktu and Columbus, Ohio. So nobody heard of Wapak, and here Wapak was on the map because we were the first man on the moon and stuff. So we just busted buttons. They were very proud, very happy.
We went back to Wapak following the moonwalk in July. We went back in September for a celebration for Neil Armstrong when he came to town, and there was a big parade for him, and everyone. I think everyone in Ohio that was close enough came to Wapakoneta to watch the parade too, because everyone was so proud of the fact that it looked to us like we were winning the space race against Russia, and that we had actually made strides into history and you know, made a difference with the beginning of the moon landing and the successful return to Earth.
Well, I think I was as mortified as everyone when it happened because the press made a big deal out of it. And the thing that probably concerned most people other than the loss of life, and in the United States any loss of life is, you know, always considered a tragedy, but we didn't know what that was doing to the whole project. I mean, millions of dollars had been invested. We had just gone through the whole Gemini process. We almost lost some guys in the Gemini process, and now the first thing in Apollo, this new spaceship that we've got to go out and orbit the Earth, blows up on us. So, I mean, there were a lot of concerns, and as I recall, NASA shut the whole thing down for a couple of years until they made sure everything was picture perfect and clean. But you know, millions of dollars had been spent to make sure the first one was okay, and so I think that was the biggest concern. The loss of life is certainly a very sad thing, and that was the foremost thing. But following quickly up on that was we're spending millions of dollars, and this is the kind of result that we get out of it.
Being an American and thinking this country was the best country, I had no doubts we were going to win it. We had decided we wanted to. And when you pause for 6 or 8 months to, quote, find out why the 3 astronauts died in Apollo 1, that wasn't deciding you want to. To me, it was like driving. You go home, pick up a Columbus Dispatch tonight or something, you're going to find there's going to be a death, a traffic accident someplace. That doesn't prevent your dad from driving to work on Monday morning. And that's what I thought the space system should have done. Too bad, check it out, why I found out what happened, but continue to mosey forward. That was my viewpoint on it.
The concept that they were there, okay, but now they're going to walk out into zero, atmosphere, very little gravity, excuse me, and actually walk on another. I'm not sure that we really had a concept of that. We watched it on television. We heard the description. The television stations all had drawings and things of what was happening and images and so forth. But I don't think it really grasped what it was. It was pretty fascinating. The pictures were horrible. I mean, if they didn't say, well, now that's the ladder he's walking down, and that's attached to one of the LEM's legs, I'm not sure you could have picked that out very well. And then when he stepped off the thing, he sort of, like he was falling, and you thought, ooh, what happens if he falls over? Can you get up in these things? Because there's no one else out there, It was kind of a surreal experience. Some people even years later said, no, it never really happened. Well, so there's always been the doubters about whether it was actually real or not.
Well, you heard about the Cold War all the time on the news, in the movies, and so we were I was very aware of the fact that there could be spies living around with, in the United States. We always think that there could be spies. And
the Cold War was all we knew. When we watched television and read comic books, and we read a lot of comic books, and those kinds of things, it was always about the bad Russians. Either that or they were the bad Germans, because we had just come out of World War II. So the German people were still bad guys. If you went to the movie, the person either had a Russian accent or they had a German accent. I mean, they were the bad guys in the movies and the comic books and on radio and then eventually on television. And we live near Lima, Ohio, and there's a refinery in Lima, Ohio. So everybody was sure that one of the first things the Russians would do is they would bomb the refinery in Lima, Ohio. Now, there wasn't anything you could do about it, and it probably was the last target in the United States they would ever want to bomb. But you know how people are. They talk about something close to them. So we were fearful that something was going to happen, but I think for the most part, there were so many things going on. We were teenagers, we were young. It was more important to worry about cars and classes and stuff, that the Cold War was there, we knew about it, but it didn't become a real dominant concept really until I think I got in college. So as a high school student, yeah, you sort of knew it was there, but there were a lot better things to worry about. And then when you got into college, you started thinking about, how can I influence this? What can I do about it?
I'm a very cynical person and a very, I think to say, fairly realistic. I wasn't afraid of it at all. I feared if we stood up and looked at the Soviet Union in the eye and punched them in the nose, they would go back like a bully and did it and stuff. I have no memory of us jumping under desks or tables at school. We see films now, they said in the 50s they did that. I do not believe Wapak students, your dad, your grandfather and I did that. I have no memory of us doing that. I was not afraid of nuclear war because I didn't think it would happen. When we had the Cuban Missile Crisis in October of '62, people were desperate. People left my college to go home because they wanted to be with their families when Armageddon happened. I wasn't scared of it at all. I figured the Ruskies would back down. It turned out I was right. Thank God. Thank goodness.
What our feeling was is now we're way ahead of the Russians, because now we have the capability to go out, do something, and then bring it back. And there was always this thing in the back of our mind, how many people did the Russians lose in their space program that no one ever heard of? Because we always feel like in the United States, life is much more precious than it is anyplace else. So we weren't quite sure about that. So I think at the point where we could circle the moon and come back, we felt like this is really a giant step forward, because now it's not just sending someone like Shepard out, making a circle and pounce it back in. We've now been able to actually do something.